Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Earlier this week, Nintendo dropped a new trailer and some details on the website that were very exciting. But now, just 4 days later, there has been a major update to the website. There's a lot more new footage and screenshots and details, and from what we're seeing, to me, it's kind of mind-blowing. The mechanics that they're showcasing here and what Zelda can do, I think, are extremely impressive and surprising, and so we're going to be diving into that, but also there are some cool lore details about the game as well that have been hinted at or shown, so we'll be discussing that as well. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So I don't want to do a total website tour here because we kind of did that earlier this week. I'll be pointing out the things that I think are really interesting though. So scrolling through, so far it looks pretty much the same, but what you'll notice right here is that these 3 different tabs that were kind of dimmed out earlier in the week have now been updated. And it's interesting because at first we thought that these tabs were hinting at new trailers that will be dropping every couple weeks leading up to release, but since only 4 days later they've now been updated, that's obviously not the case, and these are actually completely different sections that detail different aspects to the game. Now, the story section, I'm not going to even bother clicking it because it's something we've already seen. If you want to see it for yourself, it will be linked in the description below. There's nothing new there. But in Wisdom and World, there's quite a bit. So here, in the background, pay no mind to the actual text. If it's something that's worth bringing up, I've done the translations, I will bring it up. Most of the time it's pretty basic stuff. But we see that Zelda is using her echoes in a variety of different ways. We've kind of seen evidence for all this so far, but here is where things start to get crazy. She's using the water to create buoyancy to float up the bed in order to create an elevator. That's crazy that she's doing something like that. To me, that is already mind-blowing, but it gets even crazier. Now, I will mention here that there's this enemy we haven't seen before, or at least I haven't seen before. I think it's a pretty cool looking enemy, this moth-looking creature. But where things get really wild is here, where we see Zelda actually using different forms of echoes to get higher and higher up these trees. An area of the game we never expected Zelda would be able to go. The level of elevation and verticality in Echoes of Wisdom is unexpected. Normally in 2D Zelda games or top-down Zelda games, getting up to these places wouldn't happen. These would just be the barriers of the game. And so in Echoes of Wisdom, these barriers don't exist. And to me, that is extremely exciting and totally unexpected. So here we're seeing different examples of Zelda using different echoes or solutions to solve the same problem. She has this chest here she needs to reach, so she's either going to build a bridge of water or a keys to glide over. In this section here, we're seeing bridges being used, beds being used to build a bridge over lava or rocks. This part here, though, has me very, very curious. Because what happens here is that Zelda catches fire, but she has multiple different ways to cool herself down. She can create a gust of wind with this fan-like thing on the left, or use water. And so to me, this sort of speaks to the idea that the physics and mechanics in this game are fairly in-depth, and it does appear to be an extensive evolution of that 2D Zelda prototype we saw shortly after the release of Breath of the Wild. We discussed this a couple days ago. When Nintendo launched Breath of the Wild, they had this making of series where they showed off this prototype that was using different cool physics-like mechanics we saw in Breath of the Wild, but with 2D gameplay to test out the concepts for Breath of the Wild. And I always wanted that to be realized into a full-on game. And here we're seeing with Echoes of Wisdom that that's exactly what they're doing. There's a lot of really cool different abilities and mechanics that are overlapping with each other that are kind of mind-blowing to me. Scrolling down even further, we can see that Zelda is using these different echoes in different ways that cause different things with the environment. So here to the left, she's going to be bringing over some meat. And when she sends out the meat, the snakes get attracted to the meat, come out of the grass. Kind of like Bokoblins in Breath of the Wild, right? Something similar. Except now she summons a Peahat to completely annihilate them. And then meanwhile, on the right, she becomes a pyromaniac, kind of like what you can do in Breath of the Wild, and she can light up grass and the fire spreads and it will burn anything that is in that area. It's pretty ruthless, but it does speak to the physics and mechanics involved with this game. Now here we just see her using different echoes in different cool ways. She looks like a really powerful Wizrobe mage here when she can summon these little thunder balls. I don't even know what this is called, but yeah, that's pretty cool. She can summon fish here, that's neat. Something here that I find interesting though, is that we kind of get a good look at the lock-on system. And what you'll notice is that Zelda's kind of strafing around left and right around the crow. And this is something we haven't seen in prior 2D Zelda games, this lock-on system, but they're incorporating it into this game. And I think it just kind of speaks to the idea that Echoes of Wisdom isn't just your basic top-down Zelda from before. There's a lot more mechanics here that are reminiscent of 3D Zelda, but put into the perspective of top-down gameplay. Kind of takes me back to what we were speaking on earlier, how Zelda was able to climb up these different elevations of trees, something that would normally be treated as a boundary you couldn't reach in prior 2D or top-down games, but here, it's just another place you can go, and to me, that's really cool. In this section here, we are seeing that Zelda is using her new ability, Bind, to trap this wolf, and then she summons her Bokoblins, the echoes of her Bokoblins, to just spear away at this wolf that's trapped in place. It's kind of ruthless, but it speaks to the kind of insane amount of combinations you can put together between your echoes and your bind abilities. Here we just see more examples of her using bind. In some ways it's an extension of Ultra Hand, but it's also kind of quicker to use and more simple because of the perspective of the game. But let's continue on, this is not really new information. Here though, this is kind of neat. So a lot of people have sort of been perhaps somewhat upset or sad that with the introduction of the horse, there is not really much need for the Pegasus boots in this game. But here we see that Zelda is using Bind in conjunction with the Blade Trap to zoom across the map here with some pretty good speed and also offensive ability. Kind of a neat combo there. And here, she's using the crow or bird, I guess it's not a crow, but whatever that bird is, she's using it to raise herself up through Bind, or rather reverse Bond. And I guess what's neat about this is that we initially thought that birds might just be for gliding through or gliding down, but clearly here it's not just gliding down, but also rising upwards. But now moving on to the world section. Here I think we're going to have a little bit more details on the lore. We got a good look at the river town actually, which is kind of neat. But moving on, we see a lot of different screenshots here. And some of these are revealing some very cool details. For example, there are multiple screenshots that show that Zelda now has 5 triangles. And at this point we have seen Zelda have 3, 4, and 5. At this point I think it's fairly safe to say that as you progress throughout the game, you will be building up these different triangles. And I think this is something that's absolutely important to have a conversation on, because I think there has been some concerns about how easy this game might become. Because clearly, Zelda has a variety of abilities that, as you kind of go throughout the game and expand on, when you combine them, can lead to some insane possibilities here. And if she can build up on her triangles, she's going to have more options. So these triangles initially will limit you, but as you progress, you're going to become increasingly more powerful. So what may end up happening is something similar to Breath and Tears, where the beginning of the game feels pretty challenging, especially depending on where you go. But as you progress, the game is likely going to feel a fair bit easier because you are becoming increasingly more powerful. Now, of course, we don't know how this game will be balanced. Well, that remains to be seen. We probably won't know much about that until we actually get to play the game ourselves. But something I do think is worth noting is that we have seen confirmation that Zelda can rest on the beds and heal her hearts. But in this footage here I'm showing you, you'll notice that she goes from 2.5 hearts to 3, and then she's just sort of sitting there for an extended period of time. So either A, you can only recover your hearts up to 3 while resting on beds, or B, it takes a very long time to do so, so you can't just do it in the thick of combat. So it is limiting in that way. And I think this is actually important because if you could just summon a bed anywhere and heal your hearts up all the way, then the game would be pretty darn easy. But if you can only heal up to 3, then at least there's some level of limitation there, but you can still have the benefit of being able to heal yourself somewhat and being able to avoid that annoying sort of beeping sound when you're low on hearts. Some other things I'd like to speak on here when it comes to these screenshots are just different depictions of the characters. So here we see an example of the interactions between the river and the sea Zora. This here appears to be the King Zora reacting to the Queen of the Sea Zoras and just the music she's able to play and how good it sounds. Even this river Zora over here is actually quite impressed. At least it seems that he's vibing to it. Now we look over here, we can see it, but on the other side, we see the river Zora playing his music, and what's interesting about this one is that the Queen Zora right here is holding her hands together. It almost looks like she might be falling in love with this guy over here, which is fueling my theory that this whole storyline between the Zoras and how they've been having this feud is going to lead to them pairing up together and living in conjunction with each other, and thus leading to a merging of the two different Zora tribes, which would then explain the different varieties of Zoras we see in Breath of the Wild and Tears, games that take place at the very end of the timeline. Something else I noticed though when it comes to Zora, we have this cute little young river Zora here, or I mean, yeah, it's a river Zora. I kind of swap them sometimes accidentally, but this is a river Zora. And here, I did the translation. Basically, it says that he's scared, he can't go because he's afraid of water, which is kind of weird because, well, he's a Zora, but that's what it says. And I think this sort of just speaks to how there's going to be a lot of interesting character interactions in this game. That is the vibe I'm kind of getting when I look at these different screenshots, these different characters, how they evoke emotion. You look at these Gorons over here, or just the interesting designs of the Deku Scrubs now and how cool they are and how they're in love with sweets. It seems like there's a lot of personality to the characters, and this art style that they've gone with here is doing a great job of showing off these personalities, and I'm just kind of really enjoying it here. I'm looking forward to seeing more of these characters, how they fit in with the world, and the updates to the lore. This part right here I found to be somewhat fascinating because we're just kind of seeing more gameplay of Princess Zelda riding on the horse in a variety of different locales, and I mean, that's what it is. Now, I think this is a different horse from the ones we've seen in the past, because one was a darker brown. I think this one's a lighter brown, or at least later on it'll show a lighter brown version. And there was also a white one. So it just kind of further supports the idea that there's a variety of different horses in this game that you can likely find. Where can we find them? Yeah, that's the lighter colored version right there. That's definitely different than the other ones. But yeah, that remains to be seen in terms of where we find these horses, but I'm sure there's somewhere in the world. But just seeing these horses in this game, seeing different areas where we can use the horses, I think it does speak to just how much larger this map is compared to prior top-down 2D Zelda games. Now, we're pretty much nearing the end of the updates here, but there's still some other cool character stuff. So here we see Link. There isn't much being said that's crazy here for Link, but what is interesting is that we're seeing a nice, clean, crisp shot of this version of Link. And I kind of love how they show this version of Link right next to this version of Link. And if you pay attention, you notice that there are some clear differences here. The sword hilt is not the same as this one here. This version of Link is the same Link from the key art that's right next to Ganondorf with the purple energy or fire, what have you, right behind him or surrounding him. And he has an angry look. I do still theorize that there's going to be at least one point in the game, perhaps multiple, where you have to fight Link, perhaps an evil version of Link, because this, to me, suggests an alternative version to him. He even has a different sword. So that's what I think is going on with him. However, with Ganon, things are a little different. So from this translation I have, it says, Ganon, a powerful monster that captured Princess Zelda. It seems to have something to do with the crack, but... ... So, there isn't a lot here, but there does seem to be an interesting hint that something is a little different. Hence the but... ... You can see the dots here. What's going on? It appears that there is a little bit of a curveball here, and there have been theories that perhaps this version of Ganon, he might be more like a puppet, and I think there might be something to that idea. Now, looking at this image here, something I notice is that his necklace, right here in the middle, there is a lack of a purple circle, but here in the gameplay screenshot, there is a purple circle. And so I just find it interesting how there seems to be something peculiar about both Link and Ganon here when they're showing off these characters. Some things are not adding up, and I do think there are some story details that they have yet to show off because they're probably hoping that we find out while actually playing the game. Then I don't want everything to be spoiled before actual release. So I'm glad they haven't shown anything else off, and right now we can just kind of theorize on what's going on. But we got a little bit more. So here we have a nice image of the king, the minister, the general, that's who they are, but also Impa. This is Impa right here. She was doing some cool tricks in the trailer, but she's just a nice old lady that is the nanny for Princess Zelda, but obviously she's more than that. And then also her brother, who's a researcher on cracks, apparently. I'm assuming the cracks that are all throughout Hyrule, the rifts that we're hoping to dispel. Yeah, we got that, and they are siblings, which is interesting to note, and they both are likely Sheikah, for sure. So, that's pretty much it from the website stuff, but overall, I find myself really impressed with what they're showing off with the gameplay mechanics, Zelda being able to combine the echoes in the way she's doing it, how some of the echoes have their own properties like the water, and that creates buoyancy and allows wood to float up in the water. To me, that's mind-blowing that they have that programmed into this game. And then also her ability to climb up the trees, something we've never seen done before in prior 2D top-down Zelda games. To me, that is very, very impressive, and it's cool stuff. They're doing a lot with this game. They are going all out. This isn't like a softer, weaker version of top-down Zelda because it's starring Princess Zelda. No, this is a fully fledged, proper top-down Zelda game, and I am very excited. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.